Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Smith. I'm Group Managing Director of People to People in Australia and Frog Recruitment in New Zealand. It's Friday afternoon. It's on the east coast of Australia, and it's 12:30, which means it's time for us to have our live broadcast on YouTube and Facebook about the employment market and what's going on in the jobs market throughout Australia and New Zealand. So I'm looking a little bit, I'm sure if my dad saw me today, he'd say, "Mark, what are you doing? You're not wearing a tie. What's going on?" We're actually moving offices today. Our human resource P2P HR solutions team is moving office from our Chatswood. So hence we've got the boxes behind us, etc. So we've got to pack up a whole bunch of computers and everything this afternoon and take them into our Sydney team. So please bear with us whilst we do this. We thought we'd do it from a different location today. I've just seen that Shannon Barlow, who used to manage this office, is online this afternoon, and she says, "Love what you've done with the place." Well, thanks, Shannon. Yes, it is a little bit different from when you were managing Chatswood here. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to go through an overview of the market and what's actually going on in the employment market at the moment. Then we'll do our regular numbers section. And this week we've had the ABS release the unemployment data here in Australia, so I'll be going through that. We'll be joining Kim Padmore from our Western Australian office from Perth, and she will be talking through what's actually going on in WA. Then we'll also be talking to James Moore from our Sydney team, who's got a fabulous opportunity he wants to share with us. And finally, we've got Lisa Johnson from our Western Sydney office, who's got a job hunting tip based on a very popular blog post that she has written and gets thousands of views every month. So stay tuned for that one. So if you have any questions, then please pop them in the comments and we'll get to them. As you can tell already, we can see them as we're live. So please put any questions there and we'll respond as soon as we can. So let's get into the market wrap. So the market wrap. What have we got happening in Australia at the moment? Well, the temporary market is holding up. Now, it is by far. So what I'm trying to say here is it's a long way from where it was pre-COVID. So a lot of recruitment agencies are down something in the order of 40 to 50% in terms of the number of vacancies that are being listed with them. There are some pockets of improvement, particularly in some areas of healthcare, but also in IT seems to be holding up alongside engineering, particularly related to government contracts and defence. So there's a little bit of work coming through there. We saw a restriction bounce in May and June, and that has definitely cleared from now. We're seeing that the number of permanent vacancies listed with us has deteriorated from that peak. I would suggest it was pent-up demand or pent-up vacancies that needed to be worked on but couldn't have been during the initial lockdowns. And now we've come back to where the market actually is, which is at the bottom of the market. Last week I mentioned also candidate hesitancy in terms of the fact that there is an illusion that because of the unemployment, which we're going to talk about in the numbers section today, that there is a large number of high quality talent out and about and looking for work right now. And I would suggest that it's not entirely the case. Although we're experiencing situations where clients are saying to us, well, we don't need to use an agency, we can find people ourselves. They're suggesting that they don't need to actually meet the market in terms of salaries because they feel that the market means that they have more people available, that they don't need to compete. And I would suggest that with the fact that the health issue is playing out big time, it is causing a lot of hesitancy from candidates. I know of one experience where this was a systems analyst role that we were working on, and originally the client was looking to pay in the vicinity of $200,000. We found a candidate at around that 175 sort of level. In the end, after negotiation, and this process went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, in the end the offer came in at 180. Imagine that. The candidate saw an ad at around 200 and then the offer's at 180. For a start, we're in trouble. But it's still more than what he was on in his current position at 175. And yet he declined the offer because it's better the devil you know. I'm going to stay with my existing employer. So I think that is a very common story these days. It means that there is hesitancy in the market. If you are employing people, don't assume that you're going to be able to have the upper hand in the negotiation when you're trying to hire that quality talent that you're looking for. So an interesting marketplace. So now let's move on and talk about the numbers for this week in our regular numbers section and the release of the data from the ABS. Okay, so let's, Jaden, if you could pull up this data was released at around lunchtime on Thursday, and it's the key figures from the ABS. The key points here is that unemployment is at 7.5%. Now, I actually expected that to be higher. We ran a Twitter poll last time, and the majority of people thought it would be about 7.8. It turned out to be 7.4. So we're up 0.1% in terms of the unemployment rate. What's interesting, though, and it's not a good milestone, but for the first time, we've clipped 1 million unemployed Australians in July of 2020. The employed persons actually dropped by 3.2%. The unemployed persons increased, and you can also see that the participation rate has increased also by 0.6 points, which I thought was interesting as people return to the market as well. So let's have a look at the graph, Jaden, of the unemployment rate, just to put it in context. So yes, that's pretty scary, from 15 through to 2020, and you can see that this is the seasonally adjusted number from 7.4 last month to 7.5. No real surprises there, but I think the question that most people who, when they see this number, are asking is it truly representative? So the next graph is sort of a breakdown of the monthly changes in the key labour force populations. And I thought, after looking at that table, it's a bit harder to see, and I thought this was easier to really understand. The blue is employed people. The green is unemployed. The purple is people not in the labour force. So you can see that the employed people dropped dramatically in April, dropped in May, increased in June, and then has increased in July. And similarly, unemployment has increased, but at a slowing rate over the last few months. And you can see the labour force participation there as people were exited the labour force, and now they are returning in June and less so in July. In the month of, I think it was April, it was the lowest participation rate that we had experienced in 25 years. So we're sort of trying to now get back to more of a normal level. Actually, I think that number was in May. Now, the next graph, if you could move to that one, Jaden, for me. This is jobs growth versus unemployment rate. And what I'm really trying to say here is, or to show you, is that what is the real or effective unemployment rate? And that's the light blue line. So the effective unemployment rate, which includes those people who work 0 hours and those who have left the labour market, is in the vicinity of just over 10.5%. And it was a significant decline from the previous month, but still a number which is double figures, not 7.5%, which is the unemployment rate in the red. And I think that is more realistic in terms of the actual unemployment rate here in Australia. You can see the employment growth, the aggregate hours worked there. There's no real surprises as well. I can just see a comment there from Shannon, who is, I know, our managing director in New Zealand, and she said that it was really surprising that the New Zealand unemployment rate dropped slightly to 4.0% in New Zealand, but the participation rate in New Zealand showed a more realistic story. We'll see if we can get Shannon online next week and she can talk through the New Zealand numbers for us, because that sounds very interesting. So if we can move to the next one. Yes, now I wanted to show everybody this one because This is interesting. This is the part-time workers and the number of hours they're actually working. And so if we use the baseline of March 2020 for part-timers, they're now working more hours than they were prior to COVID, which I thought was really interesting. And some people would suggest that they have taken up the shifts of those people who were in full-time work during that time, or can no longer work, or have exited the marketplace. So part-time workers are now working more hours than they were working prior to the start of the pandemic, which I thought was very interesting and something to consider when we are talking about also the change in the temporary and contract market, which we're seeing in our numbers at P2P. So that's it for the numbers. Now let's move on to our spotlight in the market with Kim Padmore from our Western Australian Perth office.
Hi, Mark. Well, in WA, so I mean,
just changing my seat. Changing my seat, Kim. There you go.
You would know that we are roaming free here in WA, not to run into New Zealand and Melbourne at the moment, but we're finding most businesses have all of their staff return to the office or have a mix of working from home and office. Some businesses I've spoken to have said they've actually implemented more flexible working practices and will long-term have staff working remotely. So that's been interesting. The city definitely feels busier here as well, and it's harder to get a parking spot, so that's definitely a sign. I think the real judge of our recovery are the coffee shops. I was having a chat to the coffee shop down the stairs in our building, and they said they're back to about 80% of what they were pre-COVID. So that tells you a bit about the volumes that we're at and people coming back into the city. In terms of, sorry, Hugo.
No, go ahead. No, go right ahead.
In terms of industries, according to Seek Analytics, looking at this month compared to this month last year, the growth areas that we've seen have been community services and development. So that's largely that aged care and disability services space. And also farming and conservation, which is interesting, and self-employment, which is unsurprising given everything going on. The biggest areas that we've seen in decline have been information and communication. And I'm not sure whether that's due to, there was such a surge when all this happened. So there was a lot of hiring and movement that happened then, and now it seems to have sloped off. And also administration and office support as well has seen a decline. So those are the two main areas that have seen the biggest change.
Yeah, that's really interesting, particularly on the whole communications piece. Do you think that's more on the marketing side? Do you think that there's fewer opportunities? Because anecdotally, it seems to be holding up, hey?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think because a lot of businesses really had to, get all of their IT and communications set up when everything hit, and obviously everyone moved remotely. There was a lot of hiring at that time. So whether now they've bolstered their teams enough that they don't need to be hiring now, I think that would have some part to play in it.
And anecdotally, I know just from talking to your clients, which you can do in person in Perth, which I think is amazing. Yeah. And what's the feeling about like WA borders closed and versus what's actually happening over east with obviously the close down in Victoria and the stories that come out of New South Wales, etc. So is there? Do you think that that the Western Australian market will remain closed?
So I think so. We have been gathering a lot of data in the last few weeks and asking our clients about what their predictions are between now and the end of the year. The feeling here is largely that if our borders stay closed, we'll be okay. We seem to be on the up, albeit slow. However, there's a lot of concern around the borders opening, and I hear every day Clive Palmer's name mentioned. He is trying to open our borders and sue WA at the moment. So I think that is really the topic for everyone at the moment, and everyone's quite concerned about that and feels that there will be a negative impact on business here.
Stirring a hornet's nest, I think, if you're the WA there. And I think you've got an opportunity you'd like to speak to us about.
Yeah, we do. So because of government grants in the home building space for first home buyers at the moment, there's a lot of growth in that sector. So we're currently recruiting for a pre-start consultant to join a national home building organisation. The role that we have is based in Osborne Park. It's newly created because of the growth and will initially be a 6-month contract, although it does have the opportunity to extend beyond that point as well. It's really part of a collaborative, social, team environment. I mean, one of their company values is fun, so it's a really nice place to work. What they're looking for is someone who has worked in pre-start before. I mean, they're just so busy. They've got really high volume, fast turnaround, so they need someone who already has the experience to come in and hit the ground running. Salary-wise, they're offering up to 65K plus super, and then there's additional benefits included as well. So yeah, it's a really good role for someone who's looking for a bit of a change or can start straight away and work the contract.
Yeah, fabulous. I see that Jaden has put the job up in the comments so that people, if they're looking to apply, they can apply there. But if they wanted to call you and find out a little bit more, how should people get in touch?
Yeah, definitely. Give me a call on 08 6160 6201, or you can send me an email, which is Kim with an I at people2people.com.au.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kim Padmore, all the way from WA this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Now let's move on to James Moore from our Sydney team, who I believe has a fabulous opportunity that he'd really like to talk to us about as well.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Mark. Hello, and hello to all watching. So in terms of the role, pretty exciting one for me because I guess being a recruitment consultant myself, I know the importance of business development. And on that note, it is a business development manager role within a global law firm. They're looking for someone quite hands-on. It's going to be sitting within the business development, marketing and communications team. However, you'll be assisting the senior lawyers and partners to win new business, retain existing business, and there's also an element of account management to it as well, assisting the senior lawyers and partners in the intellectual property tech and tax space.
Right. Okay. And what sort of benefits are there for this particular role?
Yeah, so look, they're paying a quite competitive salary. It is going to be paying up to about 160 in terms of package. In terms of benefits, look, being a global law firm themselves, they really pride themselves on the internal and external social elements, and along with, in terms of onboarding as well, with the current conditions, they're more than happy for people to be starting from home in the job or in the office if they would like to as well.
Okay, that's nice. Nice to hear. It's quite that sort of flexibility. And what's the best type of? If somebody's listening and they think, yeah, I wonder if I'm suitable for that. What sort of qualities should the applicants have? What are they looking for?
Yeah, so obviously someone with a business development or sales background within legal would be fantastic. But look, it's not industry specific. They're happy to consider people from other areas, other industries as well, as long as they've been doing a business development role. So it is quite open, and I do encourage people to apply if they feel that their relevant experience will be necessary, because they're not too particular on the actual industry itself. Just more about the work and I guess the involvement that you have in the business development space. It is quite a hands-on role. You'll be assisting another senior BDM. Essentially, the two of you will be running that together. So quite hands-on.
Fabulous, fantastic. All right, and if somebody wants to give you a ring and find out more about it, I can see Jaden's done the right thing here and also put so you can apply online in the comments there, which is fabulous. But if somebody wanted to talk to you directly to find out more, how would they do that?
Yes, so my direct number is Sydney, so 02 8270 9778, or you can reach me on email, which is james.moore, and that's 00 at people2people.com.au.
Fabulous. Thanks, James. That sounds like a great opportunity. So if anybody's interested, then please reach out to James or just apply in the comments there, and we'll see if we can get some more information to you. Thanks, James. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Mark.
And next, let's move on to Lisa Johnson, who is working from our Parramatta office today. And Lisa has been a vigorous blogger for People to People over the years. Vigorous, is that the right language I should use there? I'm not sure, but
yeah. Extensive, productive, unstoppable blogger.
And I thought we'd today talk about probably your most popular blog. Well, I won't, which gets I think between 2,500 and 3,000 views every month from on our website. And I thought, well, yeah, let's share with everybody out there what this blog is actually about, because it is a job hunting tip, really. So,
yeah.
do you want to tell us about the blog and why you wrote it in the first place?
Well, it's a very old blog now. I wrote it 6 years ago, but it was prompted by two things. One was I'd seen an article in the newspaper where somebody was promoting the idea that people should put their photos on their resumes. And I was like, that's a really, really bad idea. And this, at the same time, at that point, I was recruiting a role on the Sunshine Coast, bizarrely. And it felt like every single application I got had a photo of a woman in a white dress holding a glass of champagne. And I just remember thinking, it's distracting and it's the wrong photo, and it's just like, it's not helping the cause. So I wrote this blog to explain why putting photos on your resume is actually a really bad idea. And it basically comes down to understanding bias. So we are all biased. You can't help it. A lot of it's subconscious. It's a result of all sorts of things in your life. But when you're recruiting, we're supposed to be as unbiased as possible. So we're not allowed to judge you based on your age or your race or your ethnicity or your religion. And part of that can come into what you look like. So my recommendation is you don't put a photo on a resume, because when you're doing that, you're giving somebody an opportunity to reject you. And particularly now when you're in a really competitive market, you want people to look at your work experience. You want them to see that you've got the skills and the ability to do the job. You don't want them to look at your photo and go, oh, I don't like her. And make judgment calls just based on what you look like. And so it's a very controversial blog. If you go and look at the comments, there's lots of people who go, thanks for telling me. And then there's lots of people who say, I don't agree with you. And at the end of the day, it's your individual choice as to whether or not you do it. But I just know that you really want people to be looking at your experience and your skills, not going, oh, she reminds me of that girl that was mean to me at high school and I really didn't like her. And that sticks in people's brains, and it can just lead to your resume ending up to the side rather than being at the forefront.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even today, also that all with AI and the way that CVs are parsed into systems, that the first hurdle that your CV needs to cross is the fact that you will be all of the details will be parsed out of that CV and populated into some sort of system. And the photo can actually muck up with that as well, can't it? I mean, it's really text-based CVs is the way to go, besides the unconscious bias issue, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's an interesting thing because I did write it 6 years ago before we were even contemplating things like video interviewing, and AI wasn't even imagined. It was just a Steven Spielberg movie at that stage. And now, of course, we've moved on. But the difference between a photo on a resume and doing a video interview is that you're in a video interview, you have the opportunity to share yourself, really. It's more about your communication and your enthusiasm and the answers you give. It's not somebody just looking at you going, I don't like him. Which
now we've got a question here, which is an interesting one, actually. Be interesting to hear your answer. Do you recommend having a headshot photo public on LinkedIn for potential employers to see then?
Well, you know what? That's a really interesting one as well. And LinkedIn definitely encourage you to have a photo on it. They promote that themselves. But there's been a lot of inappropriate photos on LinkedIn as well. So if you might think it's funny and you put something up and then other people are going to look at it and go, oh, look, it's tacky, or I don't like it. So I do think if you are going to put a photo on LinkedIn, do make it as professional as possible. Make sure it's just a headshot. It's not a picture of you in the pub drinking champagne. And I have seen those resumes. So you're wanting people to include you, not exclude you.
Yeah, and the only comment I would make on that is that I'd be a little bit more adamant that you should have a picture on your profile on LinkedIn, but there's a big difference between LinkedIn and your CV. LinkedIn is a brochure, so think of it on a very trivial level. LinkedIn is the brochure. Your CV is the user manual. They're two different things. So if you buy a TV, you'll have the TV which got a brochure, then you have the user manual. Two different things. LinkedIn is the brochure, which shows you as here's a potential hire, and your CV is the actual detail. And I don't think the distraction of a photo works with that. But let's see what everybody has to say, because it's really, people get fired up on this issue. It's really quite interesting. It's magic. So we've put the blog in the comments. So if you'd like to have a read of it, have a look at that and comment away. Lisa will comment straight back, I am sure. But thank you, Lisa, this afternoon for sharing your job hunting tip and your famous almost.
Thank you. That's my 15 minutes of fame done. And good luck to everybody looking for a job.
Yeah, fabulous. Thanks, Lisa. Rightio. Well, that brings us to the end. I'm just conscious of time. We're a little bit over. We're about a minute or so over. So thank you again for joining us on a Friday afternoon with the market update, what's happening in the jobs and employment market throughout Australia and New Zealand. Have a great weekend, everybody. I won't be with you next week. We'll likely have Catherine Kennedy who'll be hosting next week's Facebook Live. So we'll see you in a fortnight and enjoy the rest of the working week and the weekend. Thanks, everybody.